The lightsaber is the most iconic weapon in fiction, and most people think they know everything about it. They don't. There are 15 distinct lightsaber variants across Star Wars canon, and some of them are genuinely insane. So today I'm breaking down every single type, what makes it unique, and why it exists. Starting with the one everybody knows. Standard single-bladed lightsaber. This is the iPhone of lightsabers. Everybody has one, it does everything well, and every other variant on this list exists, because someone looked at this design and said, what if we made it weirder? But before we get to the weird stuff, we need to understand the baseline. The standard single-bladed lightsaber features a hilt measuring roughly 10 to 14 inches with a plasma blade extending 36 to 40 inches from the emitter. Luke carried one. Obi-Wan carried one. Vader carried one. Virtually every Jedi and Sith across every era has wielded some version of this exact configuration. It's the default for a reason. Here's the thing though, calling it simple is doing it a massive disservice. The entire weapon is powered by a kyber crystal housed inside the hilt, and that crystal is semi-sentient. It attunes itself to the wielder's connection with the Force, determining everything from blade color to combat performance. You don't just build a lightsaber, the lightsaber kind of builds you back. Now, blade color, blue, traditionally means guardian, green means consular, red means someone's gone and corrupted their crystal through the dark side, but they're not absolute rules. The High Republic era introduced Jedi swinging around gold, purple, you name it, which suggests the old system was more guideline than law. The crystal picks what it picks. And honestly, that's what makes this design so elegant. It's straightforward, it's reliable, and it tells you something about the person holding it before they even ignite the blade. Every lightsaber on this list is a response to this one, but if the standard lightsaber is the full-sized sword, the next entry is its scrappy little sibling, Shoto lightsaber. Most people see a shorter lightsaber and immediately assume it's a lesser weapon, like it's the training wheels version, a lightsaber for kids. Turns out no, the Shoto is actually the opposite of that. The Shoto lightsaber is notably smaller than standard, with a shorter hilt and a blade that comes in well under the usual length. And yeah, Yoda's lightsaber is the most famous example, but here's the thing. Yoda uses a Shoto because he's 2 feet tall. Ahsoka Tano pairs one with a standard length primary saber, and she's got normal human height. That's not accommodation, that's a philosophy. Ahsoka wields her main saber alongside a Shoto offhand in what's called Jar-Kai, an advanced dual-wielding discipline within Jedi combat doctrine. And when I say advanced, I mean it. Jar-Kai is classified as a technique you graduate to after mastering single-blade combat. You don't start here, you earn this. It's the weapon equivalent of taking the training wheels off, and then also removing the handlebars, because you don't need them anymore. The smaller offhand blade sacrifices reach for speed, maneuverability, and the ability to generate attack patterns that absolutely overwhelm opponents trained against a single standard saber. It's harder to use, harder to master, and requires force-enhanced coordination that most Jedi never bother developing, which is, not ideal for the people fighting Ahsoka. But if the Shoto is about making one blade smaller, the next variant went in the complete opposite direction. Double-bladed lightsaber. This is the one that made every kid in 1999 lose their mind. 2 plasma blades extending from opposite ends of a single hilt, creating a weapon that's basically a glowing bow staff of death. The hilt runs about 12 to 16 inches long, with blades stretching roughly 36 to 40 inches from each end. That's up to 8 feet of plasma, which is, not ideal for whoever's standing across from you. Darth Maul's double-bladed saber from The Phantom Menace is obviously the iconic example. The moment he ignited that second blade, the entire franchise changed. It turned a character with maybe 3 lines of dialogue into one of the most recognizable villains ever made. But here's where it gets interesting. Building one of these things is genuinely complicated. The hilt needs sophisticated bifurcation systems that split kyber crystal energy between 2 completely independent blade generators. Some designs use twin crystals to handle the workload. That's twice the engineering, twice the maintenance, and twice the things that can go catastrophically wrong mid-fight. Not everyone wants to carry a weapon that might malfunction because one of its 2 plasma generators decided to take the day off. The fighting style is completely different too. We're talking rotation-based attacks, simultaneous multi-directional defense, and footwork that has 0 overlap with standard single-blade techniques. It looks incredible. It demands respect. And yet, here's the beautiful irony. Maul wielded arguably the coolest weapon in Star Wars history, and still lost to Obi-Wan's disciplined single-blade defense. Turns out, looking terrifying and being unbeatable are two very different things. But if you think exotic hilt design stops at add another blade, wait until you see what happens when someone decides to bend the handle. Curved hilt lightsaber. Most lightsabers look roughly the same. Cylinder, button, blade. Functional, sure, but about as personalized as a company-issued laptop. Count Dooku looked at that and said, "No, I'd like mine tailored, please." The curved hilt lightsaber is exactly what it sounds like. A standard single-blade configuration with a 15 to 20 degree curve built into the handle itself. And before you write that off as purely cosmetic, hear me out. Because the curve is doing more work than almost any other design choice in lightsaber history. Dooku was a master of Makashi, one of the 7 classical lightsaber combat forms. Makashi is all about precision, economy of movement, and one-on-one dueling. It's fencing, basically. No wild swings, no acrobatics, just clean, efficient blade work designed to pick apart an opponent's defense with surgical accuracy. And the curved hilt exists specifically to facilitate that. The angle guides the wielder's hand into an optimal grip position for complex wrist movements and cutting angles that would require awkward repositioning with a straight handle. It's the lightsaber equivalent of a custom-fitted Italian suit. Every detail serves a purpose, and the purpose is making you look effortlessly better than everyone else in the room. Here's the thing, Dooku didn't just pick a weapon, he built a physical manifestation of his entire combat philosophy. Elegance over brute force, efficiency over spectacle. The man chose a fighting style that prioritized being precise over being powerful, and then he engineered a weapon from the grip up to match. That's commitment. But if you think a slight curve in the handle is an aggressive design choice, wait until you see what Kylo Ren did to his crossguard lightsaber. Kylo Ren could have fixed his lightsaber, he chose not to, and that single decision tells you more about his character than 3 movies worth of dialogue. The crossguard lightsaber features 2 lateral quillons extending about 8 to 12 inches perpendicular from the hilt base, creating short plasma crossblades that give the whole weapon a medieval longsword silhouette. It looks ancient, it looks aggressive, and in Kylo Ren's case, it looks broken, because it literally is. Here's the thing, the kyber crystal inside Kylo's weapon is cracked, not damaged in battle, not worn down over time, cracked and deliberately left that way. The fractured crystal produces that characteristic crackling, unstable blade that spits and oscillates like it's barely holding itself together. The crossguard vents aren't even a design choice in the traditional sense. They're pressure release valves. Without them, the cracked crystal would tear the weapon apart from the inside, and Kylo never repaired it. He had the knowledge, the resources, and the ability to replace or heal that crystal. He refused. The lightsaber is literally broken the same way he is, torn between light and dark, unstable, dangerous, and functioning through sheer force of will rather than any kind of harmony. That's not lazy prop design. That's character psychology expressed through a weapon. Now, when this thing first showed up in the 2015 trailer, the internet had opinions, strong ones. People called it impractical, goofy, over-designed. But the High Republic Initiative later established that crossguard lightsabers existed among ancient Jedi thousands of years before Kylo was born, retroactively validating the design as historical rather than some random invention. Fan reception has quietly shifted from mockery to genuine appreciation, which, funnily enough, mirrors Kylo's own arc pretty well. But if you thought the crossguard was a niche design, wait until you see what happens when you shrink it down. Guard Shoto. Here's the thing about lightsaber design. Sometimes you don't want the best offensive weapon. Sometimes you just want to not get your fingers cut off. The Guard Shoto is what happens when someone looks at a crossguard lightsaber and a Shoto and says, "I want both, but smaller." It's a compact secondary blade with an emitter guard built into the hilt, giving you crossguard style hand protection. On a short blade, you can actually swing quickly. Honestly, it's kind of brilliant for what it is. This design lives almost entirely in Legends material and expanded universe content. No major on-screen character wielded one as their signature weapon. It's the kind of thing you'd find referenced in old RPG sourcebooks and technical manuals, the deep lore stuff that the hardcore community kept alive long after the books went out of print. But the real philosophy behind this thing is what makes it interesting. It's not built to hit hard or reach far, it's built to keep your hands attached to your body while fighting in tight quarters. defensive stability over offensive reach. That's a fundamentally different combat mindset than either a pure crossguard user or a Shoto specialist would adopt. It's niche. It's rarely the star of the show. But if you need a reliable offhand weapon that won't get your fingers separated from your palms, you could do a lot worse. Now, if the guard Shoto is about compressing a lightsaber into something smaller, the next entry goes in the complete opposite direction. Lightsaber Pike. Not every Jedi was a warrior. Some of them were basically security guards, and their weapon proves it. The lightsaber pike is exactly what it sounds like, a lightsaber on a stick. Take a standard plasma blade, slap it on the end of a 24 to 30 inch elongated hilt, and you've got yourself a polearm stretching 60 to 70 inches total, which is either the coolest thing you've ever heard or completely ridiculous depending on how you feel about medieval weaponry in space. These were the signature weapons of the Jedi Temple Guards, the masked, robed figures you can spot in the Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith. Their pikes feature a distinctive yellow blade tied specifically to temple security traditions. Not blue, not green, yellow. Because apparently even the Jedi had a dress code for their bouncers. Here's the thing though, the pike isn't just a visual gimmick. These guards weren't frontline fighters. They weren't leading clone battalions or hunting Sith lords. Their entire job was standing at a door and making sure nobody got through it. Perimeter defense, archive protection. The pike's extended reach was designed for exactly that. Maintaining distance, holding a line, not chasing anyone down. Most people think of the Jedi as one homogeneous group of lightsaber swinging monks, but the Temple Guards proved the Order had specialized roles with completely different tactical mandates and weapons built from the ground up to match, which is, way more interesting than anyone gives it credit for. But if the pike represents the Jedi's institutional complexity, the next weapon represents the Empire's answer to it, and it's significantly more unhinged, Inquisitor lightsaber. Most lightsabers are extensions of the person holding them. The Inquisitor lightsaber is a machine that does the work for you. Here's the setup. You've got dual plasma blades extending from opposite sides of a rotating central hilt, and that hilt has a motorized mechanism built into it that spins the blades independently of whatever your hands are doing. You don't rotate the weapon rotates itself. At full extension, with the spin activated, you're looking at roughly 50 to 56 inches of whirling plasma death, which is, a lot of whirling plasma death. The Grand Inquisitor's weapon from Rebels is the most iconic version of this thing, and the design carried straight over into the live-action Inquisitors in Obi-Wan Kenobi. It looks absolutely terrifying. A helicopter of red plasma screaming toward you at high speed. Nobody's watching that and thinking I can take him, but here's the thing. The entire design philosophy is a shortcut. Jedi lightsabers demand conscious, force-guided control. Every movement is deliberate. Every strike is an extension of the wielder's connection to the Force. The Inquisitor lightsaber just says, nah, let the motor handle it. It's the cheat code lightsaber. Press a button, blades go spin, look intimidating. The engineering is genuinely impressive, requiring precise power regulation and some of the most complex mechanical systems ever crammed into a lightsaber hilt. But philosophically, it's hollow. It replaces mastery with machinery, and that contrast is entirely the point. The Inquisitors aren't holistic Force practitioners. They're mechanically enhanced enforcers running on borrowed power and borrowed weapons. Impressive? Absolutely. Intimidating, without question. A substitute for genuine skill every single time. But if you think a spinning lightsaber is a strange departure from tradition, wait until you see the one weapon that broke every rule the Jedi ever established about what a lightsaber should be. Darksaber, every other lightsaber on this list, is a type, a category. The Darksaber isn't that. There is exactly one, there has only ever been one, and it might be the single most important weapon in Star Wars that isn't named Skywalker. Here's the thing. The Darksaber was built by the first Mandalorian Jedi, a warrior named Tara Vizsla, who somehow managed to bridge two cultures that have spent most of their history trying to kill each other. He took Jedi lightsaber technology, fused it with Mandalorian martial traditions, and created something that looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. A flat, black plasma blade edged in white, not a cylinder of light, a blade that looks like it was forged in a blacksmith's shop and then set on fire by the Force. And that black coloration. It breaks every rule we know about kyber crystals. Blues, greens, reds, yellows, purples, whites, sure. Black doesn't appear anywhere in the known crystal color spectrum. Whatever Tara Vizsla did to that crystal, nobody has been able to replicate it since. But the Darksaber isn't famous because it looks cool. It's famous because owning it makes you the ruler of Mandalore. not metaphorically, literally. It's a lightsaber, a crown, and a cultural artifact all rolled into one, and you can't just pick it up off the ground, you have to win it in combat. That detail has driven entire storylines across the Clone Wars, The Mandalorian, and Ahsoka. Then there's the weight problem. Multiple characters have commented that the Darksaber feels heavier than a normal lightsaber. Din Djarin could barely use it effectively, and this is a guy who fights for a living. The weapon literally resists wielders it considers unworthy, which is a level of personality no other lightsaber has ever demonstrated. So a Jedi broke every convention his order held sacred, built something completely unprecedented, and accidentally created the most politically powerful object in Mandalorian history. Sometimes one guy just changes everything. But if the Darksaber represents the most unique lightsaber ever built, wait until you hear about the most primitive, because lightsabers weren't always elegant weapons from a more civilized age. Proto-saber. Here's the thing about the Proto-saber. It was objectively worse than every other lightsaber on this list. Bigger hilt, clunkier design, more mechanically complex for no good reason, and a blade stabilization system that basically amounted to, we're figuring this out as we go. These were the beta test lightsabers, the version you'd refund on Steam. Originating thousands of years before the films, Proto-sabers represent the earliest attempts at lightsaber construction. Ancient Force users during eras like the 100-Year Darkness were working with the technological equivalent of duct tape and optimism, building massive hilts with external power packs connected by cables because nobody had figured out how to internalize the power source yet. Every elegant weapon you've seen in the films. It took millennia of iteration, and presumably a lot of singed eyebrows to get there. But here's where it gets humbling. The Force users swinging these glorified glow sticks around, they were potentially more powerful than the Jedi we know and love. Their Force mastery was comparable to, and in some cases exceeded, the polished knights of the prequel era. They didn't need a perfect weapon. They just needed the Force and something vaguely sharp. And that's the real lesson of the Proto-saber. It's proof that the tech doesn't matter nearly as much as the person holding it. Hand a modern lightsaber to a nobody, and they'd lose a hand. Hand a Proto-saber to an ancient Jedi master, and they'd carve through anything in their path. But if you think a clunky hilt is a weird design choice, wait until you see what happens when someone decided a lightsaber should be flexible. Light whip. Every lightsaber variant we've covered so far shares one fundamental assumption. The blade is rigid. The light whip throws that assumption in the garbage. Instead of a single solid plasma blade, the light whip produces multiple flexible strands of plasma energy that can flex, extend, retract, and wrap around opponents like, well, a whip. Which is genuinely insane when you think about what that requires mechanically. Here's the thing. A standard lightsaber channels power through a single plasma generator, one crystal, one blade, one containment field keeping everything stable. The light whip has to distribute energy across multiple plasma generators simultaneously, maintaining coherence in every single strand, while those strands are actively whipping around at combat speed. Keeping plasma stable in a rigid column is already sophisticated engineering. Keeping it stable in a structure that's bending and flexing in real time requires dynamic field modulation that is exponentially harder than anything a conventional lightsaber demands. And then there's the combat problem. Every lightsaber form, every technique, every muscle memory pattern a Jedi or Sith develops over years of training is built around a rigid blade. Fixed length, predictable arc, consistent contact point. The light whip has virtually zero overlap with any of that. You're essentially learning an entirely different weapon from scratch. Different body mechanics, different striking philosophy, different everything. It's the mad scientist lightsaber, built by someone who looked at thousands of years of refined lightsaber engineering and said, no thanks, I want chaos. Which honestly might explain why almost nobody uses one. But if you thought the light whip was a strange departure from convention, wait until you see what happens when lightsaber design meets aristocratic vanity. Light foil. Every other lightsaber variant on this list tries to be more. More blades, more length, more mechanical complexity. The light foil goes the opposite direction. It gets thinner. We're talking a blade width of 1 to 2 inches. Standard lightsabers sit around 3 to 6 inches wide. The light foil cuts that down to basically a glowing needle. It's a plasma rapier, and it's exactly as terrifying as that sounds. Here's the thing. Getting a blade that thin and keeping it stable is genuinely difficult engineering. You're essentially asking a kyber crystal to thread its energy through the eye of a needle instead of a garden hose, which is, not ideal for reliability. But the payoff is surgical precision. A light foil wielder doesn't need to overpower you, they just need to hit you in exactly the right spot, and that thin blade can reach places a standard lightsaber physically can't. Pinpoint strike placement, enhanced penetration, the ability to slip past defenses that would catch a wider blade. It's a weapon built for someone who already knows they're better than you. The trade-off is real though. That razor-thin blade covers almost zero defensive area, and one solid hit from a conventional lightsaber and you're in trouble. The light foil is believed to have been created by early Sith and rose to prominence alongside Makashi, the dueling-focused lightsaber form. By the Clone Wars, Jedi had largely abandoned it, which makes sense. You don't build a fencing weapon for an era of full-scale war, but if the light foil is a weapon of quiet precision, the next entry decided precision and firepower shouldn't be mutually exclusive. Blaster Saber. This is the Swiss Army knife of lightsabers, and I don't mean that as a compliment. The Blaster Saber is exactly what it sounds like. Someone took a perfectly good lightsaber and bolted a blaster onto it. The hilt houses both a standard plasma blade emitter and a blaster cannon, letting the wielder swap between melee combat and ranged fire from a single weapon. On paper, that sounds incredible. In practice, it's a compromise that makes both systems worse. Here's the thing. Lightsaber technology and blaster technology operate on fundamentally different principles. The power systems are incompatible. Running both simultaneously requires a sophisticated power distribution setup crammed into a single hilt, and the result is degraded performance across the board. The blade isn't as strong as a dedicated lightsaber. The blaster isn't as powerful as a dedicated blaster. It's a jack-of-all-trades situation, and you already know how that saying ends. But the real problem isn't mechanical, it's philosophical. The entire Jedi tradition revolves around mastery of the Force. A lightsaber is an extension of that mastery. You deflect blaster bolts because you trust the Force to guide your movements. You close distance on armed opponents because the Force is your shield. Strapping a blaster to your lightsaber is basically saying, yeah, I don't trust the Force to handle the ranged stuff. Which is, not ideal. It's the weapon of someone hedging their bets. Practical? Maybe, but it carries the energy of bringing a cheat sheet to a test you were supposed to study for. But if you think a blaster modification is pushing lightsaber design to its limits, wait until you see what happens when someone just decides to make the whole thing bigger. Great lightsaber. If the light foil is a scalpel, the great lightsaber is a sledgehammer someone strapped a plasma blade to. This thing measures 96 to 108 inches in total length, with blade width and power output scaled up to match. It is the inverse of the Shoto philosophy, where the Shoto says less is more, the great lightsaber says more is more, and also, I'd like even more than that. The design philosophy is beautifully simple. Overwhelm your opponent with sheer reach and raw striking force. Create a defensive perimeter so wide that getting inside it feels like trying to walk through a helicopter blade. Every swing carries enough momentum to make blocking it a genuinely unpleasant experience. But here's the thing. All that power comes at a steep cost. A weapon this size turns like a cargo ship. Faster opponents can exploit the gaps between swings, and there are a lot of gaps. You're betting everything on the idea that your opponent can't close the distance before you bring that massive blade back around. If they can, you're in trouble. That's why the great lightsaber is almost exclusively associated with practitioners who have exceptional physical strength or who fight using aggressive, force-heavy styles. You don't pick this weapon because you want options. You pick it because you want your opponent to know exactly what's coming and still not be able to stop it. But if you think an oversized lightsaber is pushing the limits of lightsaber engineering, wait until you see what happens when someone puts a hinge on a double-bladed one. Hinged, double-bladed. This is the final boss of lightsaber engineering, and it's exactly as insane as it sounds. Take two complete lightsaber units. Now connect them with a sophisticated hinge mechanism that lets both units rotate independently while staying physically attached. What you get is a weapon that can transform mid-fight between a dual lightsaber configuration, a connected staff mode, and basically every angle in between. It's the most versatile lightsaber variant in existence, and it's not particularly close. But here's the thing. Versatility like that comes with a price tag measured in engineering nightmares. Every other lightsaber on this list channels power through rigid static components. The hinged double-bladed has to maintain plasma coherence through moving articulated joints. flexible power distribution systems keeping energy flowing while the entire weapon rotates and reconfigures around a mechanical pivot point. One containment failure at that joint and you're holding two very expensive paperweights. Or worse, the mechanical complexity here dramatically exceeds every other variant we've covered, every single one. Building this thing requires access to advanced manufacturing that most Force users will never see, plus the willingness to dedicate yourself to mastering a weapon with multiple configuration states and multiple potential failure points. It's the rarest lightsaber design in canon for a reason. Most people look at the engineering requirements and go, yeah, I'll just carry two separate lightsabers, thanks. And honestly, that's a reasonable response. But the hinged double-bladed exists because someone in the Star Wars universe looked at every lightsaber variant available, every spinning disc and flexible whip and oversized greatsword, and said not complicated enough. It represents the absolute outer boundary of lightsaber design complexity, a weapon that literally shapeshifts during combat because one blade configuration simply wasn't enough options, and that's the beautiful thing about lightsabers. As long as Star Wars exists, somebody will always find a way to make them weirder. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.